In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro announced the creation of a special presidential command of the 1-4-10 system of good government. The Arab League Council affirmed that Israel's crime of foreseeable displacement of the Palestinian people constitutes an attack on Arab national security. And Senegal's top election authority ruled as unconstitutional the postponement of a presidential election scheduled for February 25th. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro announced the creation of the Special Presidential Command of the 1-4-10 system of good government. On Thursday, the Venezuelan president affirmed that the command will serve to combat bureaucracy and to improve the efficiency of his government's plans in the national territory. Likewise, the creation of the command will guarantee the protection and welfare of Venezuelans and will also contribute to the recovery of the real economy and the social rights of the people. The Venezuelan head of state also condemned the seizure of the Venezuelan airplane teleSUR in Argentina, pointed out that the government of Javier Milei is the hero of the Venezuelan ultra-right wing.
The bandit Milei stole the plane from Venezuela. Javier Milei, the hero of the ultra-right, of the surnames. That same hero of the ultra-right, of the surnames, stole a big plane from Venezuela, from you, the workers of Conviasa. Now Milei is a hero. Milei, the crazy Milei, he pretends to be crazy or he is crazy or both, but he stole a plane from Venezuela.
In Venezuela, deputies of the National Assembly rejected the seizure of the Venezuelan airplane teleSUR in Argentina. During Thursday's ordinary session, Congressman Pedro Infante indicated that the seizure of the aircraft represents a value of at least $83 million, in addition to being an attack on the operational capacity of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. The deputy also stated that the seizure of the aircraft by the United States was carried out in complicity with the government of Argentina.
We have proposed in this National Assembly to debate a draft agreement to condemn, repudiate, reject the blatant theft of an airplane that is property of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Now the people who see us and listen to us will say, well, what is that airplane? They should know that Venezuela owns a Boeing 747-300. That is a huge plane, one of the biggest planes in the world, a cargo plane, a plane that also has a cost of approximately $83 million. People of Venezuela, on February 12, took off from Argentina a plane that cost $83 million and that belongs to the people of Venezuela. They just stole $83 million from us. That is that teleSUR plane, property of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela.
And we stay in Venezuela, where the government announced the suspension of activities of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights in the country. Foreign Minister Ivan Hill assured that said office has shown on multiple occasions its bias against Venezuelan government policies, failing to comply with its mission to ensure respect for the human rights of the Venezuelan people. Therefore, Hill asserted that the personnel of said office must leave the country within a period of no more than 72 hours.
The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela announces its decision to suspend the activities of the Technical Advisory Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights in Venezuela and to carry out a comprehensive review of the terms of technical cooperation described in the letter of the understanding signed with said office in the next 30 days. For which reason, it requests that the personnel assigned to this office leave the country within the next 72 hours. until such time as they publicly rectify before the international community their colonialist, abusive, and violating attitude of the United Nations Charter.
In Argentina, workers and social movements marched to demand increases in accordance with inflation. This in connection with the meeting of the negotiating table designated to establish the minimum wage for workers without collective bargaining agreements, in addition to defining the unemployment benefits. Workers warned that the accumulated inflation in recent months, especially in foodstuffs, has been weakening the income of workers in general, hitting hardest those who were already in poverty. They also demand the adjustment of wages according to the accumulated inflation since December 2023, which according to the calculations of labor organizations represents an increase of about 85% of labor income. Haiti's government announced Wednesday that it is working on a formal agreement with Kenyan officials to secure the long-awaited deployment of a police force from the East African country to combat the rising wave of violence in the Caribbean nation. The Ariel Henry government indicated that it is working on a memorandum of understanding to set a deadline for the arrival of Kenyan police forces on Haitian territory. The deployment was requested in October 2022 and approved by the United Nations Security Council a year later. President William Ruto persists in leading the security mission in Haiti despite the judicial block issued by a court in Nairobi. The court at the time was stressing that it would be unconstitutional to deploy officers abroad unless there is a reciprocal agreement in place with the host government. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. On Thursday, the Council of the Arab League has affirmed that Israel's commission of the crime of forcible displacement of the Palestinian people constitutes an attack on Arab national security. In an extraordinary session of permanent representatives on Thursday, the Council expressed concern over the unprecedented dire conditions in Rafah, the southernmost city of the Gaza Strip along the border with Egypt, citing Israel's plans and intentions to forcibly displace approximately 1.5 million Palestinian citizens there outside Palestinian territory. The Arab League Council denounced the ongoing Israeli aggression against the Syrian Arab Republic and the Republic of Lebanon. The aggression includes killings of civilians and the destruction of homes and infrastructure in violation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of both states, as well as international law. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva met his Egyptian counterpart Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in Cairo on Thursday for talks over the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza. During the talks, Lula expressed his government's position regarding the war, condemned terrorism, and accused the Israeli occupation forces of carrying out a genocidal war on Gaza.
Brazil has strongly condemned the attack carried out by Hamas against Israel and the act of taking hostages. We condemned and spoke out against the terrorist attack. But there is no justification for the Israeli response to defeat the Hamas movement. Unfortunately, it is killing women and children, which is something that we have never seen in any war, that I have knowledge of.
The United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees warned of a financial crisis if funding suspended by several countries is not resumed. The United Nations Agency detailed that 16 states suspended their contributions after Israel accused 12 employees of belonging to the Palestinian resistance movement Hamas. The head of the agency, Philippe Lazzarini, assured that they will have a negative cash flow starting in March and will accelerate in April unless the frozen contributions are released. On the other hand, the High Representatives of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Josep Borrell, stated that the block of funding to the organization is dangerous, as it is widely known that UNRWA is an irrepressible provider of vital aid to Palestinians. Greece and Palestinian governments insist on finding alternatives to stop Israeli invasion of the Gaza Strip and ensure access to humanitarian aid. Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki, in talks with his counterpart, Georgios Gerepatritis, stressed the lack of aid due to the blockade and restrictions imposed by Israel. He indicated that the idea of the Israeli regime is to expel all Palestinians abroad. Al-Maliki also referred to the increase of violence in the West Bank, calling for an immediate ceasefire.
For us, this is very important, and that's why we talked about how to stop the invasion of Rafah. We talked about how to bring humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip, which is certainly scarce because of the barriers and conditions that Israel puts on the entry of such aid. And this aid must enter in large quantities and must enter all areas, including the northern part of the Gaza Strip. We talk about preventing displacement, regardless of its names. This displacement that aims to drive the Palestinian people out of the Gaza Strip abroad.
Lebanon will submit a new complaint against Israel to the United Nations Security Council following the aggressions against civilians in the south, acting Prime Minister Najib Mikati confirmed on Thursday. According to the X account of the Lebanese government, the chief executive asked Foreign Minister Abdullah Bou Habib to urgently condemn before the United Nations the persistent Israeli attacks, the killing of citizens, and the massive destruction, in particular what happened on Wednesday in Nevatia. It is also underlined that the Speaker of the Lebanese Parliament, Nabib Berri, and the head of the Resistance Loyalty Bloc in the Lebanese Parliament, Mohammed Rad, pointed out the racist character and the impossibility of Israel to coexist with human beings. Syrian army units fought violent clashes with terrorist forces of the Islamic State north of Damascus. According to military sources, the fighting occurred in Duisan Desert, where several terrorists were killed, while 8 Syrian army servicemen lost their lives. State security forces intensified their patrolling operations in Al-Adiyeh region, while fighters bombers launched raids on terrorist headquarters in Sugna and Palmyra areas. Damascus denounced that the Islamic State intensified its attacks following the recent U.S. aggression against military points of the Syrian army and its allies east of the country. We're going to take a final short break now, but first let's listen to a poem read by British actor Brian Cox. The poem was written by beloved Palestinian poet, teacher and martyr Rifat al-Reher. Rifat was killed on December 7th by an Israeli airstrike. This was the last poem he published. Let's listen.
If I Must Die by Rifat al-Reher, November the 1st, 2023. If I must die, you must live to tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings. Make it white with a long tail, so that a child somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad who left in a blaze and bid no one farewell, not even to his flesh, not even to himself, sees the kite, my kite you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment an angel is there, bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope. Let it be a tale.
Welcome back to From the South. Greece Parliament approved a landmark bill allowing same-sex civil marriage on Thursday, granting same-sex couples the right to wed and adopt children. According to the Greek national broadcaster ERT, a majority of 176 lawmakers out of a total of 254 cast votes in the 300-seat parliament voted in favor of the bill entitled Equality in Civil Marriage. The new law also grants same-sex couples full parental rights for both partners, but not the use of assisted reproduction methods. However, recent opinion polls showed that the Greeks were divided on the reform. Even when the bill was voted on, opposite groups were still holding demonstrations. In Italy, more than 1,000 farmers staged a new day of protest in rejection of falling incomes and rising product costs. Several farmers' groups have been organizing protests since the beginning of January from Sicily to Turin. Protesters' complaints range from fuel costs to European Union environmental regulations designed to mitigate climate change, but that are demanding their livelihoods. For its part, a delegation had earlier visited the offices of the European Union to deliver a document with its demands. Meanwhile, in Spain, farmers and stockbreeders protested with tractors in front of the Ministry of Agriculture in Madrid. The Minister of Agriculture, Luis Planas, announced a package of measures that, in his opinion, responds to the three basic elements raised by the sector, which has been protesting for more than a week, with road blockades in different parts of the country. In this sense, demonstrations have also been replicated in other European countries due to the bureaucracy and complexity of European regulations, the low prices at which they sell their products, and the competition from foreign goods. On Wednesday, Russia's President Vladimir Putin announced at a Future Technologies Forum meetings that his country is on the verge of creating vaccines against cancer. The Russian leader added that he hoped that vaccines could be used soon and effectively. New discoveries in the field of medicine, methods of prophylaxis and treatment should be available to people and widely used in the primary healthcare sector. On the other hand, Putin said that during the commercialization of advanced scientific solutions, when the intellectual property rights are transferred to the producers, the research teams should receive a deserved remuneration. The so-called royalty, the volumes of which should be calculated according to a regular methodology. Senegal's top election authority ruled as unconstitutional the postponement of a presidential election scheduled for February 25th. The nation's Constitutional Council canceled President Macky Sall's decree through a joint judgment approved by 7 members of the electoral body. The ruling also stated that the National Assembly's move on February 5th to reschedule the vote for December 14th also was contrary to the Constitution. Opposition presidential candidates and lawmakers had filed a number of legal challenges to last week's parliamentary bill, which also extended President Macky Sall's mandate in what critics said amounted to an institutional coup. Sall, who has been in power since 2012, sparked uproar on February 3rd when he called off the elections over disputes about the disqualification of potential candidates and concerns about a repeat of the unrest seen in 2021 and 2023. In this context, several government opponents were released from prison on Thursday amid a political crisis that has gripped the country since the presidential election was delayed. Some move by President Macky Sall to appease public opinion had been expected after deadly protests and international concern erupted following his decision earlier this month to delay the election slated for February 25th. 3 people have been killed so far during demonstrations, with security forces repressing attempts to mobilize. Opposition and civil society groups have issued new calls for demonstrations on Friday, while a peaceful march organized by a civil society collective is planned for Saturday. From Thursday, African leaders will gather in the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa, home of the African Union, for the continental body's annual summit, where regional integration is on the top of the agenda. The annual meeting of African leaders will question the progress made in the face of the alarming security situation and conflicts in some of its member states, and offer recommendations on innovative ways to sustainably address crisis in a bid to return to peace. In the encounter also would be discussed the working division between the African political organization and the regional economic community. During the meeting, the President of the African Union Commission, Moussa Faki Mahamat, called to evaluate the Union to be more efficient and warned against the risk of resolving conflicts through barbarism. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net, and join us on social media as well: Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.